Hello everybody, welcome to another live stream with me, Lara Ryan from Complete Test Success, and today we're focusing on IELTS Speaking Part 1. So I've been an IELTS examiner and I've been teaching IELTS since 2010. So what I can do is I can get some of you to come and join me here. I'll ask you some questions and basically I'll give you some feedback on your biggest problems, what areas you should focus on to improve your scores. So by me pointing out your biggest problems, that will help you improve your scores as quickly as possible. You fix your biggest problems, your score will go up a lot faster than trying to fix lots of small little issues. So the way this works is I have a link I can share with you guys here. Okay, so I've just shared the link. If you go to the comments, you'll find that link. So here, it's link to join me live. You click on that. You can come and join me here. As I said, we're focusing on IELTS Speaking Part 1 today. So I'll ask you some Part 1 questions, give you feedback, and tell you what areas you need to focus on. If you have questions or anything about the IELTS speaking test, feel free to type those into the chat, and I'll be able to answer those for you as well. Hey, Prince. Good to see you here. So that's essentially what we are doing today. Now, in part 1 of the IELTS speaking test, the examiner has 3 sets of questions to ask you. And they might not ask you all. So each set of questions has 4 questions. So a total of 12. Now, it just depends how long or how short your answers are. If all of your answers are very short, the examiner will ask you all 12. But generally speaking, it's about 8 questions. Very often, you won't even get to the third set. But the first set of questions, it's always something a very familiar topic, like your hometown, your work, your studies, your house, or your home, your house, your apartment, that type of thing. So very, very familiar topic to begin with. And then the other 2 topics would be, it could be anything, it could be shoes, it could be belts, it could be, food, anything, relatively familiar topics, but, it could be anything from a wide range. So what I'm going to focus on today, at least at the beginning, is that first set of questions where very often you're asked to discuss your work or your studies. And there's an assumption that you're doing one of those 2 things. So, if you're unemployed at the moment and, you're not actually working right now or you're not actually studying right now, that doesn't fit tidily into the questions that they're asking you. So I think an easy thing to do is, if you're in university or you're studying, say that. If you're working, say that. But if you're not doing either of those things, it's probably easiest if you just say, right now, I'm studying full-time for the IELTS test and you give your reason, why you want the IELTS test. And then you can just talk about that. When they're asking you about your studies, you can talk about that. There's just an assumption that everybody is doing one of those 2 things, which isn't necessarily true. But the examiner has no control over what questions they ask you. They have the questions in front of them. If you say, I'm working, they'll ask that set. If you say I'm studying, they'll ask that set. And there's nothing in the middle. There's nothing else for them to follow. So it's probably easiest just to say, I'm full-time studying for the IELTS test at the moment. If that's your situation. Hi, Jaspinder. Welcome to the lesson. Good to see you here. Hi, Lewis. Good to see you again. Lewis, if I don't do well in one of the 3 topics because I don't know much about it, can I still get a good score? Yeah, you can. But this is something that I get a lot from students where they're saying like, oh, I can't talk about that topic because I'm not familiar with that topic. I don't know a lot about it. But you don't need to know a lot about a topic to talk about it. And I think a good example would be when someone's in the IELTS test and, I'll say, I don't know, like, for example, what's the most common animal in your country? And they're going like, oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question. It's like, you don't need to know the answer to the question. I just need you to talk. Now, whether your answer is right or wrong, that doesn't matter. or if you're talking about if it's a question about your opinion, whether I agree with you or disagree with you, that doesn't matter. I just need you to speak. So it's not a knowledge test. So if I ask you what's the most common animal in your country, and you freeze up and you go, oh God, I don't know what to do, I don't know the answer to that question, and there's that panic, that's not really what the examiner needs from you. And just imagine if you were sitting down talking with a friend, and your friend said, do you know what the most common animal is in this country? And the answer would probably, I have no idea, I really don't know. I guess it would probably be like cats or dogs, or maybe some farm animal. Maybe some farm animal would be common. Maybe something like a cow. Maybe the cow is the most common animal. But really, I don't know exactly. I've never read anything about that before. Or I don't know. So saying you don't know, talking about it, making a guess, explaining why you don't know, just just talking about it in a normal way is fine. So if you're telling yourself, I need to be an expert on every topic to answer the questions appropriately, you're creating an extra challenge that doesn't really exist. You're just making it more complicated for yourself. So I would say, in general, if there's a topic you're not familiar with, don't tell yourself that this is a problem. Just talk about it like you would, if you're hanging out with a friend, or if you're chatting with a family member or whatever. Okay, so I have the first student. Abdul has just joined me here. So let's get Abdul on, and we will.
Hi, sir.
Hi, Abdul.
Hi,
Nice
sir.
to meet
How are
you.
you?
Good, thank you. So, Abdul, can you tell me what score are you aiming for in the IELTS speaking test?
I aiming for the band 7, but I'm preparing on the daily basis, but I am facing some sort of the problems actually.
Okay. Well, we'll take a look. I'll have a listen to your speaking, and I'll be able to point out, your main issues. Okay. So, do you work, or are you a student?
Actually, I work in a multinational company, one of the multinational company, but I do study as well along the way for the IELTS actually.
And what work do you do?
Actually, I am the senior quality officer in the multinational company where I need handling the all kind of the certification they apply for. For example, the all quality certifications like 9001 certificate and EMS certificates. These all are handled by me.
And what are your responsibilities?
My responsibility is to done the certification on time, and the all certificates that are associated with the shipment. Uh, when we don't have these certificates, so we can't actually execute the shipment. So these are all the necessary responsibility that I need to fulfill in order to execute the shipment on time.
And can you describe a typical working day?
Uh, this is most of the time happen with me. uh, for example, if I have decided different things in the morning what I need to do, but my boss come and with a different task that are totally different from my the decided list, to do list. So this is really very hurdle for me, and I need to work in the under pressure, and I can't really focus, and that is very terrible day for me.
Thank you. Okay. So for you, I would say pronunciation would be one of the main areas for you to work on. You're quite fluent. You don't need lots of time to think, and you have the language you need to discuss the topic. Um, with your pronunciation, there are two main things I'd like you to work on. One is sentence stress. So that's the rhythm of the language. So as you're speaking, typically each clause, each clause of a sentence. So like a sentence could have 2 or 3 clauses. So each clause should have 2 words stressed, generally speaking. but you have more of a flow where you're going, when you are speaking, you tend to stress the words every 2 or 3 words that you stress, like that. So you have a different rhythm from the way we speak in English. So that's one area of pronunciation. And the other area is chunking, where you need to pause after each chunk of language. I think an easy way to understand it is if you imagine a piece of writing where there are commas and full stops to break up the language. When we're speaking, we pause in those places. But what happens when you're speaking, you don't pause and you just run straight through from start to end. And what that means is the listener has to focus more to follow what you're saying. So it just puts a bit more work on the listener compared to when you chunk, you break it up for the listener and kind of show them where each piece of information starts and ends. So sentence stress and chunking, those would be the 2 areas of pronunciation to work on.
Will this not impact my fluency if
No,
I?
because it's a necessary part of pronunciation. So if you're pausing to stop and think about what to say, that's different. But these are the pauses that naturally occur in the middle of each sentence, not extra pauses to think about words or extra pauses to think about ideas. So it would be like, imagine if we have a sentence, we have 2 sentences, there's a comma, a full stop, a comma, a full stop. I would expect you to pause, and it's not a long pause, it's just a little brief little stop where that information, that chunking is communicated. But so at the commas and the full stops, there should be little pauses. But if you're pausing between those, then that's when it's problematic. So they're different. They're different pauses. They're pauses that are part of pronunciation, which are necessary. And then there's pauses where people need more time to think. And those are the problems with fluency. So they're different. So no, it wouldn't affect your fluency if you're doing it correctly. The other area then is grammar. There are 2 main problems. One is plurals. So you're using, when you should use a plural, you're using a singular noun. So that's one of the problems you're having. And then the other one is syntax. Now, I didn't have enough time to write down the specific mistakes that you were making, but it's where you're putting the words in the wrong order. So this isn't what you said, but just as an example, if you wanted to say all of my time and you said my all time instead of all of my time, so like you put the words, you have the correct words, but putting them in the wrong position in the sentence. That's the other mistake that you're making. Those would be the main ones. In terms of fluency and vocab, I didn't see anything, any significant issues there at the moment. So I would primarily focus on those. But the thing is, you can only do one of those at a time. You can't improve pronunciation and plurals and syntax all together. So just choose one of those things and fix it. When you're finished, choose the next one and fix it, and continue one at a time, like that. Okay, Abdul. So that's kind of all the feedback I have for you based on those few answers. Do you have any questions for me, or is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care of yourself. Nice to meet you. Okay. So, Mandeep. Hey, Mandeep. Good evening, best teacher in the entire world. Wow. Thank you very much. Okay. So, we'll just wait. If anyone else wants to join me, like I said, you can click on that link there and join me here. We'll do some practice together. Or if anyone has questions about the IELTS speaking test, please go ahead, type those up in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer those for you as well. Also, I have free live feedback lessons. These are my lessons on Zoom. So at the moment, we communicate where you write a comment and I'll look at your comment and reply to you that way. But on in the Zoom lessons, obviously, you can turn on your microphone, we can chat. So for some things, it's a little bit easier, especially for things like reading and listening. So in the same way with these live streams, I go through a different part of the test each week, the same in the Zoom lessons. But they're a bit more like hands-on, where we're interacting with each other a bit more closely. If you want to sign up for those lessons, you'll find a link in the video description. And yeah, I'll be able to support you further there. Hi, Lewis. Good news from me. I just got admitted to University of Auckland. Fantastic. You're very welcome. Congratulations, Lewis. A very, very big step. Well done. Very good news. And thank you for sharing. Mandeep, dear sir, can you tell me, many Indian students speak very quickly instead of natural pausing? Could you tell me the reasons? So normally, if you have, people from a certain country who are all making the same mistake, that's generally because of their first language, and they're transferring however they speak in the first language into how they're speaking in English. So the sentence stress patterns that that obviously comes from the first language, whereas in English we have that kind of a longer stress pattern where it goes, more words between each stress. So that obviously comes, and I think speaking quickly must come from your first language as well, and you'll even find with different English speakers, different English speaking nations speak at different speeds as well. Like there are some countries where they would speak much slower than I do. So I think maybe it's a cultural thing as well. But, in the IELTS test, if you're speaking very quickly and you're not chunking naturally, those two things combined are challenging. Because if you're chunking correctly and speaking quickly, it's easy enough to process what you're saying. But if you're not chunking, and it's like you've probably heard me say this before, it's if I took a text and I removed all the capital letters, all the full stops, and all the commas. Imagine reading a book like that. That's kind of what it's like when you're not chunking appropriately. So it takes much more work for the listener to figure out what's going on. And if you add speaking quickly on top of that, of course, that kind of amplifies the issue. But yeah, I think it's just based on your first language. And you'll find, people who speak the same first language will have very similar pronunciation mistakes. That's true all around the world. Hey, Prince. If I use phrasal verb, will it improve my score? Yeah, definitely. Phrasal verbs are idiomatic. So yeah, that's part of the vocab test. And Abdul, sir, should we prepare for some common topics for IELTS Speaking Part 3? Especially, this is one of the parts I struggle with. No, I think this is what Lewis was talking about earlier on. It's like, you don't need to be an expert on a topic. You can just talk about it like a normal person talking to their friends. So don't put yourself under pressure to be an expert or talk as if you're an academic who knows everything about the topic. You're not giving a presentation, you're just having a chat. And if you think about it that way, you're not under as much pressure to come up with the right answer, because you don't need the right answer. You just need to talk about the topic. So no, I wouldn't prepare for common topics in that sense of like what ideas to use. But what you can do is, if you notice there's an area, like a gap in your vocab knowledge, so maybe you're answering some part 3 questions and something comes up about social issues or whatever, some topic that you're not really familiar with, and you're like, oh wait, I find it difficult to talk about this because of a lack of vocab. That can be an idea, like to kind of follow what you notice there, and spend some more time learning vocab in that specific area. But besides that, I wouldn't do anything to prepare. Okay, so I have another student with me here, Ariel. Hi, Ariel. How are you?
Hi, how are
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Good. So, Ariel, can you just tell me, what score are you looking for in the IELTS speaking test?
I'm looking for a 7.5.
In speaking, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me ask you a few questions here. Okay. Are you working or are you a student?
Now nowadays I'm an employee because I quit my job half a year ago, and I'm preparing for my IELTS test.
And are you good at the subject you are studying?
I think it's okay. But my reading and listening are not very good because I always have problems when I listen to the audios and I couldn't catch up with the speed. So I'm learning grammar and subject matter. I want to learn more vocabulary, and when I listen to the audios, then I can understand what they're talking about, and at least I have a common sense.
Do you think it's interesting?
Yes, I think it's interesting. I'm improving my grammar, and I know. And sometimes they will talk about the past tense, future tense, or present tense, and I won't misunderstand their meanings. And they sometimes say I used to do something, but now I don't do that. So I think it's interesting. I want to improve my grammar, then I can listen and understand their speaking.
And why did you choose to study this subject?
Because I'm living in China, and I always learn Chinglish, not idiomatic English. So I often think that I don't have a good grammar. Then I often misunderstand, and I cannot read some subject matter. And I often learn I always learn those general things. I couldn't describe something, and so when I communicated with foreigners, I often panic in the past. But right now, I think I'm getting better when I study grammar, and I can understand what they're saying.
Thank you. Okay. So you're very capable of communicating. You can communicate very clearly. You kind of started a bit slowly, but you kind of got a bit more comfortable and you're able to develop your answers well. You have the vocab you need to express yourself, but if you're aiming for a 7.5, you'll likely have to improve your vocab further, and as well consider the fact that vocab is an area that takes a very long time to improve. Like, how long does it take to learn one word? And then even after you've learnt it, how long does it take before you're able to use it fluently? Like, those things don't happen quickly. So I think studying vocab would be good just because it takes so long and you'll never know too much vocab. There'll never be a situation where you're like, I learned too much. It's always going to be useful. So that would be one thing I would say, focus on studying vocab. You said you're studying grammar, but with vocab, you can always kind of study vocab and one other thing on the side. So if you're studying vocab, let's say, for example, if you're studying for 2 hours, like spend an hour on vocab and an hour on grammar, and kind of keep vocab going on the side all the time. In terms of your pronunciation, the thing that stands out most is you sometimes don't pronounce the D and the T sound in words. So like in the word it's, about, past, right, you're not pronouncing the T sounds in those words. And in the word understand, there's 2 D sounds in that word, understand. You're not pronouncing either of those. So in terms of pronunciation, that would be the main thing I'd get you to focus on as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you very much.
Very welcome. You're from China?
Yes.
Happy New Year. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Studying on New Year's Day. Dedication. Very good. Do you have any questions about my feedback before we finish up here?
Yes, I have a question. I often keep saying things without any pauses. So I wonder whether I should pause a little bit to think about what I'm going to
No.
say.
Do you mean your pronunciation, or that you need more time to think?
No, I mean my thoughts. Sometimes I cannot organize my thoughts well, and I just keep saying and saying, and I don't think about whether they are good
So
to say.
is the problem, there are two possible issues here. One is that you start speaking, but you don't know what you want to talk about yet.
Yes.
So it could be after I ask you the question, you take 2 or 3 seconds to think, and during that time decide what you want to talk about. Okay.
Okay.
But also, you should be talking about your real opinions and your real experiences. Because if you're trying to invent a story as you're speaking, you have to come up with new pieces of information all the time. You're constantly trying to think of new things. Whereas if you're talking about your real opinion or a real experience or the real situation in your country, now you're just talking about the things you remember. So you're not constantly going, what will I say next? What will I say next? You're just telling me. You're just telling me about, the situation. So you don't have to work as hard. So those two things, talk about what's true or what you already know. Give yourself time to think before you start. And if you're in the middle of an answer and you don't know where to go next, maybe just give yourself time to stop and think before you continue, instead of trying to continue with nothing to say. Because trying to talk when you don't know what you want to talk about, of course, that's not easy, So I would say those 3 things might help. It might be none of those things. You might be having a different issue, but off the top of my head, those are the things that I would consider first. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very
Great.
much.
You too. Take care of yourself. Thanks, Ariel. Okay, so I have some more questions here. Let me go through these. Lewis, is it better to pause to think of ideas rather than using fillers? Like, would the examiner think I finished my answer if I did so? No. I mean, that filler, when you're thinking, that's actually a discourse marker. That's part of your fluency and coherence score, like using discourse markers to show your thinking. So they're not exactly English words, but they're still part of speaking in English and communicating in English and saying that. But also when I did it just there, when you're stopping to think about what you want to say, your intonation goes up. When you're finished what you're saying, you go down. But if you're in the middle of the sentence and what that means is I'm not finished yet. Give me a second to think. So that's still a part of communicating in English. So no, you shouldn't avoid using fillers. They're a natural part of speaking in English. And if you're using them correctly, that is an indication that you're using discourse markers appropriately. So no, you don't need to avoid those. The thing is, if you're pausing and hesitating too often, like if you're pausing, if you're in the middle of the sentence and you're saying that all the time, that's a sign that you need to improve your fluency. But it's not that you need to try to stop saying those things. It's you improve your fluency and you don't need as much time to think, and you naturally won't say them as much because you don't need the extra time. Good question, though. Hi, Shaikh. Hi, sir. Is there any platform where I can practice speaking with native speakers? Yeah, they have platforms like that. I think if you just typed what you just said into Google, you'd probably find a good few of them. But what you have to think about is what are you hoping to achieve by practicing with native speakers? Because speaking is broken into fluency, vocab, grammar, and pronunciation. And it will help with your fluency. It's a great way to help with your fluency. It's not really going to help with vocab, grammar, or pronunciation, though. You're going to have to study those separately. And I think what I worry about a lot with students who they want to practice with a native English speaker is like, are they going to practice more outside of that as well? So let's say you have a native English speaker, you meet them once a week on a Friday and you practice for 1 hour. Does that mean you're only going to speak English for 1 hour every week? That's not enough. Like when the students on my courses are looking to improve their fluency, I'm telling them 2 or 3 hours a day. And what you'll find is it doesn't take long, like a week and a half, 2 weeks. There's very significant improvements. But, you know, that's because it's 2 or 3 hours a day and you're practicing on your own. You don't need anybody to practice with. You don't need anyone to listen to you. If you're practicing on your own, the full hour is spent with you practicing. If you're practicing with someone else, they'll do half the speaking and you'll do half the speaking. So really, you're only practicing for 30 minutes every hour. So yeah, there are platforms like that. But if you're using them, I would also encourage you to practice more on top of that. You know, don't rely solely on that, because what you might find is you're not improving as fast as you might like to. Just Mashi, hello to you. Thank you very much. Learned lots from your videos. Great. And website. Excellent. Good. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for the feedback. Hey, Jaspinder, how to join? There's a link. If you go to it's the second comment. So if you scroll up to the second comment, or scroll down to the second comment, whatever platform you're on. Hang on now, and I'll show you. It's here. Link to join me live. So click on that and you'll be able to come in and join me. How many times should we take before responding to IELTS Speaking Part 3, as I find difficult to come up with an idea for a question? I mean, you only have a reasonable amount of time, and it would be very similar to if you're having a conversation with someone. Like, how much time would be natural to wait before you answer a question when you're chatting with someone? It's the same situation in the IELTS test. So, you know, if I ask you a question and then you just go, I mean, that's definitely too long. Like, it's been weird for a while already. So, you know, in that situation, if you take too long, the examiner will either repeat the question or move on to the next question. You know, they're not going to let you sit there thinking for 20, 30 seconds. And, you know, there's only 5 minutes in part 3. So they're not going to give you that much time. But the question then is like, why are you finding it difficult to come up with an idea? And as I've said probably 2 or 3 times already in this live stream, you know, you don't need to be an expert. You can say what your real opinion is. Like, if they ask you what are the disadvantages of something, and you're sitting there going, I can't think of any disadvantages. Like, that could be your answer. You know, actually, I don't think there are any disadvantages. And you can talk about why you think there aren't any disadvantages. Like in the IELTS writing test, if you're asked for disadvantages, you have to give a disadvantage or disadvantages. If you are asked in the speaking test, there's more freedom. And if you want to explain why you think there are no disadvantages, that's completely fine. That's no issue at all. So, you know, it could be that, or it could be that you didn't understand the question and you need to ask the examiner to explain the words that you don't understand. You know, there could be multiple reasons for it. But again, just, you know, you don't need to be an expert. You can just answer questions in a natural way. Mandeep, dear sir, I have a question about intonation, word stress, and sentence stress. Is super important, like content words or function words, but will it decrease fluency because it's quite different? No, they're completely different things. Like, having correct sentence stress is completely different from being fluent. And if you've got poor fluency, that can affect your sentence stress because you're pausing too often. So you don't get the rhythm across the sentence, because if you're speaking and then you say another few, and you say another few words, and then, like, there's no pattern, there's no rhythm across that. So poor fluency can definitely affect your pronunciation score, but it's not that if you're doing it correctly, the pronunciation is going to affect the fluency score. It doesn't work like that, no. To put stress on adjective, adverb, noun, or verb while speaking. It just depends on the sentence. It just depends on the sentence. And I think the thing about intonation is you need to understand it on more like a subconscious level. So I think like shadowing is a great way to get that. You know, lots of listening, listen to English a lot. You kind of get familiar with the patterns. and trying to shadow that and trying to copy what you hear. So I think you really need to know it on a more passive and a more subconscious level. Prince, sir, I was asked how to grow meat in a speaking mock test. Is this a valid IELTS question? I don't think you can grow meat. Not that I'm aware of. Maybe are scientists able to grow meat in laboratories? Possibly. It sounds like something that's going on. But you're not expected to know what these scientists are doing or how they're doing it or explain how it's done. No, you're not. You're not expected to have some expert knowledge on some unusual area of science. No. How to grow meat. Is it like how? But no. The IELTS questions are designed so that pretty much anybody can answer them. They're not trying to trick you out, going like, do you know how specific scientists do a very specific thing? It's not a knowledge test. So no, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right at all. Mandeep, dear sir, could you tell me how to finish the sentences while speaking? Because many Indian Punjab do not finish their sentences. I'm not sure what you mean. If you could give me another, maybe a bit more detail about that. I have never noticed, I work with a lot of Indian students. I've never noticed people not finishing their sentences, so I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to. Atikuzaman from Bangladesh, thank you very much. Welcome to the lesson. I'm guessing that's some message for Ariel there. Even I was shocked. Yeah, so how to grow meat. To be honest, I would have asked how. I probably, if I was in that speaking test, I probably would ask them to explain grow meat. Because if you say how to grow a plant, got it. Yeah, you put a seed in the ground and it grows. Fair enough. But how to grow meat? You don't really grow meat. You can raise animals. Maybe that's what they meant. Are they talking about growing meat in a science lab? I'm pretty sure that's possible, but it wouldn't be very common. It wouldn't be very common knowledge how exactly it's done. So I don't know. But I would ask them to explain. If you're looking at that question going, I don't know what you're talking about, I would definitely ask. If I was in that speaking test, I'd have to ask. I don't have fluency, but I have strong pronunciation, such as elision, glottal assimilation, yada, and so on. What should I do? So if your pronunciation is good and your fluency is bad, you need to focus on improving your fluency. Practice speaking a lot. The main thing is you don't want to know what the question is going to be until you're ready to answer it. So, you can't just sit down and think like, what will I talk about? I'll talk about my favorite singer, and you just start talking. It's not that. It has to be the reaction speed, as in you see a question, you take a question, you've never seen it before. This is the first time you've ever seen it, and you have to answer it now. And I think where a lot of students go wrong is they worry too much about the quality of the answer. So they'll read the question, they go, I have no good ideas. And they'll go on to ChatGPT, get some good ideas. They go, I don't have any good vocab. They'll go to a dictionary, write down some good vocab. And then after they've kind of prepared it and gone through it in their mind, they're like, okay, I'm ready. And they give like a good quality answer. But that's not fluency. Fluency should be, here's a question you've never seen before, and you need to answer it now. And if you practice like that, where you're constantly going new question, new question, new question, trying to fully develop all your answers, by doing that over and over again and doing it for a long time, what you'll find is that your fluency improves. That's pretty much all you need to do. And I'm not saying it's easy, but just that it's not complicated. Okay, I have another student after joining me here, Jaspinder. Let's get you in. Hi, Jaspinder.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good. Nice to meet you. So, could you just tell me, please, what score do you need in your IELTS speaking test?
I just wanted to get 7.5.
in speaking?
Yeah,
Okay. Right.
and I want to say I have got 6.5 before, and now my dream is to get 7.5.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a few questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I'm going to ask you some questions about what you do. Do you work or are you a student?
Yeah, I'm working now, and I'm a cook, and I'm working in a restaurant and making some delicious food for my customers, as as well as I also do study for my graduation and that type of stuff I'm doing right now.
And how many hours do you work each day?
So it's a 9 to 5 work, and sometimes because of the enormous amount of uh, delivery and work, I have to do overtime also, and that's really difficult for me sometimes. But that's a minimum hour type of work, uh, and I'm doing that.
Why did you choose to do the type of work that you're doing?
Uh, I really love to do cooking stuff because I had spent a lot of time with my mom, and I made a lot of scrumptious meal for my family, and I got that skill from there, and always wanted to uh, get that job, and because of that, my hard work nowadays, I really love to say I'm an impeccable person and really cook really good food for my customers, and it's been a really good job for me to uh, create my skills toward my job and make lots of good recipes for people.
Thank you. Okay. So for you, 7.5 is a very high score. So like I was saying with Ariel earlier on, that vocab is going to be the one area that takes the longest time to improve. So if you have a long-term goal of getting a 7.5, you need to be realistic. Start working on vocab straight away, because it can take months and months to improve vocab. So if you wait until later, you might not have time. Whereas if you start now, constantly working on vocab, that will give you a better opportunity. Now, having said that, you did use some good vocab in that answer. I'm not saying your vocab is bad, but we're talking about your job. So typically speaking, people's vocab, when they're discussing their jobs, their vocab is going to be, they're going to have a wider range than when they're talking about less familiar topics. So I would say working on vocab would be a good idea. In terms of fluency, your answers are a little bit short, and especially
Okay.
for higher fluency scores, you're going to have to develop your answer more, and you're pausing a little bit too often. Now, we were just talking a moment ago with another student about how to improve fluency. So it would be the same thing that I mentioned earlier on.
Okay.
Your grammar, you are making some mistakes, but I'd need more time with you to figure out what those mistakes are, to
Yes.
find your most common mistake. There's no point in, like, you made one mistake with tenses, but that doesn't mean that you should spend a few weeks working on tenses. It might just be one mistake, and usually you don't make mistakes. So, we don't want to invest time in that. I'd need more time with you to figure out what tenses or what grammar mistakes you're making mistakes with. And then, as with the previous student that we were talking to, intonation and sentence stress would be the main
Yes.
areas in pronunciation to work on, and
Okay.
just kind of breaking that habit where you tend to stress far too many words in each sentence, and that would be the area to work on there. So a little bit of work to do in all areas. I would encourage you to prioritize vocab just because vocab is so time consuming.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me? Is there anything there that you want to talk about?
No, sir. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Nice meeting you. Take care of yourself. Bye. Okay, so I have another few questions. Let's go through those and we'll probably finish up here relatively soon. So next question is from Radayune. Sorry, I'm late. You're no problem at all. And again, these live streams are recorded and uploaded, so you'll be able to see them later if you like. Call me Razel. Probably easier for me, all right. I know I'm not making a very good job of your first name. Sir how can I get many real mock tests on a computer? It is argued that many websites mislead us. Yeah, I think honestly though, with speaking, it's not as significant. Like with reading, listening, and writing, the questions are quite specific. The way that they're written, like the writing part, the writing task 2 questions, they're quite specific. And what happens if you get a question that's written incorrectly? It can cause confusion, or you might be thinking like that, oh, I need to research how to organize this type of question, where it's not really a real question. It's never going to come up in the real IELTS test. So that can waste your time. With reading and listening, if they're not real, you might end up getting higher scores or lower scores than you would in the real test. So it's hard to know when you're ready. But with speaking, it doesn't really matter as much. I don't think it matters as much, because you get a question, you practice it for a minute, maybe less, and then you move on to the next one. If you get a question that you don't understand, probably just move on, don't dwell on it too much. So I think with the speaking test, I wouldn't be too worried about if the questions are badly written, because they're still getting you to talk, and that's the main thing. So the other parts of the test I would definitely be more concerned about. But in the speaking, I don't think it's not gonna do too much damage, And how can you get real mock tests on computer? I don't think you can. So like you're looking for the Cambridge IELTS books, they're not available online. So you're going to have to go to a bookshop or order online. Mandeep, I got twice 8 bands in speaking, but not perfect 9. But I want to get perfect 9. So help me. Yeah, so I mean, you just need to stay focusing on, like to get a band 9, your English needs to be at the same level as your first language, So just finding your weaknesses the same way. Like if someone's a band 6 and they want a band 7, they just need to work on their weaknesses. You're a band 8 and you want a band 9. You just need to work on your weaknesses. There's no other real way about it. It's just constantly improving. The problem is though, when you're at a band 8, it takes a lot longer to go from band 8 to band 9 compared to how long it takes to go from a band 6 to a band 7. It's like each band is like a bigger step. So each time you're improving, you would expect it to take longer, unfortunately. Sir, how to speak for 2 minutes in part 2 speaking? It depends what level you're at. For lower level students, I think it's good to consider so you have 1 minute to prepare, and in the question you have a topic, and then there's 4 prompts under the topic. So for lower level students, I think of it as prompt 1, 2, 3, 4, and during your 1 minute to make notes, consider what extra prompts can you think of, so that when you finish discussing those 4, you have some extra ones written on your note paper. So for lower level students, I think that works well. For higher level students, I would say ignore the prompts completely and just tell the story about the topic and allow yourself to talk freely and discuss it in whatever way seems natural to you. And higher level students often find that that's less challenging. Yep, absolutely. Click on the link there. We still have 10 minutes. So let me check my calendar. Yeah, so we still have 10 minutes. If you get in soon, I'll have time for sure. Mandeep, in order to become an IELTS examiner, do we have mastery in 4 skills: reading, listening, writing, and speaking? You would need to get. Yeah, you do. Sorry, so you're asking as someone whose second language is English. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You would need full marks for sure, because you can't have somebody who's at a lower level assessing someone who's a higher level. Like, I can't, like I can help I can assess my daughter's maths homework, but I can't assess, like somebody who's studying maths in university. So I think it's just like that. You need to be at that standard if you're going to be analyzing other people. From Uzbekistan, very good, welcome. Lewis, I always have to speak slowly when I'm trying to pronounce words clearly. I'm worried that if I speak as fast as I normally do in my native language, the examiner won't understand me. Yeah, so it sounds like you have a pronunciation problem that you need to fix, but you're trying to find a way to continue without fixing it. So it's like you have a pronunciation problem, but instead of fixing it, you're saying, I'm going to just try and speak slower instead, and hopefully that will help me avoid the problem. Will that work? Maybe. I can't say for sure, but is there an alternative where you can actually fix the pronunciation problem? It depends, Okay, I have 2 more questions and we're going to finish up there. Sir, could you please advise how should we practice? Currently, I record my voice during answering the IELTS Cambridge speaking questions, but I don't see any improvement. Yeah, so you need to focus on one area. Are you trying to improve your fluency, your vocab, your grammar, or your pronunciation? And if you're not sure which one you're focusing on, well then, you're not going to see improvement. Recording yourself, it depends. Again, if you're studying vocab, recording yourself and listening to yourself, it's not really going to do anything. In the same way, if you're trying to improve your fluency, recording yourself and listening to it, it's not helping your fluency. Like, your fluency is practice speaking so that you can get faster. And, in the same way, if you wanted to, run faster, if you record yourself and watch yourself, watching yourself run, that's not going to help you get faster. So it's the actual practice that does it. If you want to improve your grammar, you need to study grammar. If you want to improve pronunciation, you need to work on that. So it just depends. It sounds like you're not really sure which thing you're trying to improve. So find out what your biggest problem is, or choose which one you want to improve and focus on that. And I don't really see the value in recording yourself unless you're trying to notice particular problems or particular issues. How to generate ideas for part 2. I'd say practice planning more. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail right now because we're focusing on speaking, but it's generally people who find it difficult to generate ideas. When they practice planning lots and lots of essays, they get a bit better at it because they get more practice. Can I get a band 8 in writing if I follow your essay writing structures? It depends what your language ability is like. I mean, if your vocab and grammar is good enough, yes. If it's not, no. My structures aren't going to help somebody. If your vocab and grammar are at a band 5, those structures aren't going to overcome that problem. So, those structures are to guide you through how to organize your essay and what information to put in what part of the essay. So that'll help you with task response and coherence and cohesion. But it's not going to help you with vocab and grammar. So the answer to that question is, it depends on your language ability. So maybe yes and maybe no. Unfortunately, I can't give a direct answer to that. Can you elaborate lexical? Can you elaborate? I'm sorry, I don't fully understand that question. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Can you tell me what you mean? So there's another message for Ariel. Thank you for your response. You're very welcome. My pleasure. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I have no more students here and I have no more questions. So we'll finish up there. I'll be back next week with another live stream, most likely on Tuesday rather than Wednesday. I just had to shuffle it around this week because I had other stuff going on yesterday. Okay, so that's it. Take care of yourselves. Thank you too, Lewis. See you next week. Bye.